for data collection and data warehouses, collect mountains of data, that's the big data concept comes from, organize and analyze data, advanced analytic applications. If you listen to Suresh Nair today, the pre-luncheon speaker, I was delighted to hear him talk about advanced analytics. I talked to him at lunchtime, and he said he is working with students at the engineering college in Trivandrum, and he is giving them projects, and the students are paid. So they are making investments. Merrill Lynch is making investments in Kerala already. Now, whether you want to believe it or not, here are the proof. IBM is doing big data work in Kerala. Suresh Nair is working with, Suresh Nair of Merrill Lynch is working with students at engineering college in Kerala on building analytics, and I asked him if I could, oh, by the way, Suresh Kumar talked about the organization called KITA. I joined them after Geroge Abraham and Suresh, they started running it, and I was fortunate enough to work with them. We did some initial efforts with regard to big data back in Kerala. I have a network of statistics professors, IT professors, and all kinds of people willing and able, both here and there, to work with the group and generate some synergy with regard to big data. And if there are investors here, if there are scientists here, if there are technologists here who can help us make this into a reality, we can bring Kerala into the modern age and begin to use, take advantage of the analytics expertise that we have there. Okay, next slide please, I'm almost done. Now, infrastructure and tool, those are the things. I'm going to just skip through that. You can see, yes, there are some things needed, but not as much or as complicated as many of the other technologies that you talked about. Go on to the next one. Okay, who could benefit? You can see an array. Well, we talked about the Kerala Water Authority. There are a lot of other organizations and government departments which can benefit from it. Go on to the next slide. Now, Kerala could do it if only you would believe in it. Potential opportunities. I talked to Suresh Nair, he agrees with these things. There are outsourcing service opportunities, service centers for companies like IBM, Hewlett Packard, Infosys, Wipro, Merrill Lynch, and other companies, independent service providers to industry and governments all across India. You can see that the government department in Kerala is using IT and analytics skills. So the talent pool is there. We don't have to take it from here. All they need is some push, some way to organize them, bring them together, and make it happen. And much lower overhead than any other technology. So go big data. Now, Mr. George? Okay. Later, Geroge Abraham is going to talk about some of the things that we did back in India. Thank you. Madhu.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Thomas Abraham, for having us here. It's a great opportunity to speak with common people from Kerala that have a common goal of bringing high-end IT and entrepreneurial opportunities into Kerala. A little bit about myself. My name is Madhu. I'm a physician by profession with a computer engineering background. I'm the CEO, founder of Strayo Technology Services. We're a technology firm based in New York. Recently, we've started up operations in Kerala as well. And the subject today, high-end IT. It's an opportunity that we have. What is the opportunity? IT. So what we're here to talk about investment in Kerala, how we can invest, what is the base foundation of an investment is that there's an investor investing money and resources, and we needed to create an opportunity to make money. Now, how do you make money? There are companies that will sell products or services. Now, software giants have come over the last 2 decades, like Microsoft, and created software bundles and softwares that were services and products that companies used to better their services or products and create business opportunities. Since the previous decade, we're seeing the evolution of Google, which is an organization that has dedicated themselves on cloud-based applications. And with the cloud-based applications, just like Dr. Thomas Abraham Phillip said, big data is there, a lot of data. Now, he says that data is as valuable as oil. We have to agree that there is a lot of data that is very valuable. There is also a lot of data that will become invaluable. It's the organization of this data, how we can bring together this data to create products and services that will create a business opportunity for companies and investors, which will allow them to go forward with that product or service and fill a need in the society, which can be here in the US, in Kerala, in India, or in the world. Now, we've had a session on medical devices, and if you look at in the medical industry, there's a lot of data. For example, if you're in the hospital admitted, you're going to be on an EKG monitor, and they're going to monitor your EKG every second, every millisecond. And all that data is collected and charted. And based on that chart, an analysis is made, and a diagnosis is made, and a treatment plan is created. Similarly, all the different data in the different businesses, in the different applications that we can develop, which are cloud-based applications, which can be utilized through PCs and other hardware devices that are emerging, like mobile devices, tablets. Now, you're going to see an evolution of electronic components that are combined in the development of hardware devices, which are like mobile devices, where you can utilize it for monitoring your pulse, monitoring your heartbeat, monitoring your blood pressure, your sugar levels. This type of data can be utilized by application developers to create value-added services, because it's not just an application. It requires high-end skill set behind that application to monitor and to deliver value-added services, not just an email service or a word processing service. So this is where the opportunity is in the coming decade of high-end IT. Now in Kerala, if you go about it, this data needs to be stored somewhere. It needs to be accessible, and you need high-end data centers to access the data. You need bandwidth to access the data, whether it's wired or wireless. These type of infrastructure development is necessary in Kerala for development of these applications or marketability of these applications. These applications are definitely marketable here in the European countries, in the American countries, where bandwidth is highly accessible. Whereas in high-end data centers, a 1 Gbps bandwidth fiber connection used to cost $20,000 about 5 years back. It's costing $1,000 per month now in the US. But that's not there. That infrastructure is not there in India, in Kerala, where you can get access. And that type of development, there's an opportunity for investors and entrepreneurs to create those type of infrastructures, which is an add-on value to Technopark and the business infrastructure that we have, to allow for companies to grow their IT potential. So taking these big data of these small amounts of data and putting it together and creating a place where it can be accessed and the high-end technology and the high-end data centers are developed so that we can deliver the quality of application that is needed through any application that we use nowadays here. This is where we need to step forward and see Kerala as an opportunity. So I'd like to conclude here, but before that, earlier Suresh Kumar, I think, talked about the wheel and how we have to think about everything as a wheel. And if you look at the middle of the Indian flag is the chakram, and that is the greatest invention of mankind. So you have to keep things rolling, in whatever business it is. But the middle of that wheel, the pivot of the wheel, is the most important part of the wheel. And as Sibi of Mar Labs had indicated, we have to keep humanity and manpower as the center of this wheel and think about how we're going to be able to create this product or service utilizing the manpower that we have and how it can be beneficial to mankind or the customers or the society. Thank you.
First, let me also thank Thomas Abraham for this initiative in getting us all together here to discuss these important topics. We already heard about the high-end IT, especially we talked about big data as well as the cloud computing. If you look at the information technology areas, you could see that there are primarily about 6 areas. There are programming, software testing, software maintenance, IT research and development, high-end jobs such as software architecture, product design. Of course, then there are physical product manufacturing like semiconductors and so forth, and business process outsourcing. And then, of course, at the end there are call centers and telemarketing. So this high-end IT, of course, when we talk about it, we deal with that higher value added part of the data processing. What I want to talk here today is, of course, not about the technical aspects of it, but some of the experiences we have gone through bringing some of our experiences back home. As it is mentioned here by Suresh Kumar as well as by Abraham Phillips, we started an organization several years ago called KITA, Kerala IT Alliance. The purpose, of course, was really to bridge the minds, as they call it, to connect with the government, to connect with the private corporations there, to connect with the academia, so that we can exchange the skills for mutual benefit. But our experience haven't been that pleasant. Let me elaborate on a couple of points, because it's very important that as we sit down here and listen to all these technical discussions and what are all the possibilities, we should also be realistic as to what roadblocks, what barriers we might have over there from getting things done. Kerala IT Alliance, of course, first of all wanted to empower the children, the students. We felt that since, as it is mentioned here by many, Kerala doesn't have a big urban center like Bangalore or Chennai. We have smaller cities, like Cochin and Trivandrum. So our young, of course, mostly you have noticed, they stay home and attend colleges and haven't really developed that level of communication skills, that level of confidence. Because as a CTO of United Nations, I had the opportunity sometime to interview many of them over the phone. Definitely, the kids who grew up in Chennai or Bangalore definitely came out more confident, more assertive, and more energetic it looked like. So we felt that it's very important that we have to give an edge to our students back in Kerala. So towards that end, we struck a deal with IBM. and IBM agreed that they would provide a center of excellence for our institutions. So along with our conducting various seminars and visiting colleges and of course mentoring the students, we also embarked on this role, to try to bring centers of excellence to various universities. See, that included a couple of things, very important. First of all, IBM said they will give us free software. And also they said they will give free training to the teachers, professors in universities. Along with that, they will also allow them to take free certification. That means exams that will be, they will be allowed to take it free. So, what a deal, how you can deny such a deal. But I can tell you, we marketed that around in many institutions. There was only one buyer, that was, I had to say, St. Gibbs and Kottayam. Everybody else turned it down. At first we couldn't believe it. Why these organizations are turning down such a great offer? As a matter of fact, they really have no investment in it. But later on we figured it out. That required, of course, teacher commitment, because these were extracurricular activities. They had to spend extra time and effort. They may have to sometimes come to the colleges on Saturdays to help the students with their certifications. So there was no enough motivation for teachers to do that. So that's one situation. To give you an example, when you deal with, of course, technology transfer, and of course trying to bring these changes back to our home state. We didn't stop there. I still remember we went up to the education minister because IBM told us that, look, Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh have MOUs directly. So you don't really have to go to individual institutions in order to have this signed. But our friend Mr. Stephen is not here. Otherwise he would have liked it. Mr. M.A. Baby, who just turned it down. He said, we cannot deal with IBM. It's a company from the United States, and it's not in our policy directly to deal with them. So that was again another impediment to what we really wanted to do. So one of the problems I see there is, of course, we have professional institutions where, if anybody have heard the story of Dr. Sudarshan, he's a great scientist here in the University of Texas, who have decided to go home to help the country. He said, okay, I really want to take a sabbatical and go there and work there 3 years so that I can help India. Look what happened, he just came back after a couple of years. I asked him once, I had this opportunity to talk to him, he said, they're all PhDs out there in these professional institutions. But what happens, they come at 10 o'clock, have their lunch, 12 o'clock, and they said they would miss their bus if they don't leave at 3 o'clock. So there was really no that much of energy, dynamism, innovative spirit there for him to work there, so he came back. So what it was, as it was suggested here by some, unless there's some synergy there between the startups we're talking about and the academic institutions. And of course, if we are not, the government is not willing to channel some of this funding directly to these universities, whereas we just heard here, as far as the CUNY is concerned, that is the type of model I think we ought to have in Kerala if we really have to make, if we want to see a difference made. So when we trying to attempt these things, I'm suggesting this because one thing we need to do is, when we have a conference like this, I can tell you honestly, because we had another conference called All Kerala Professional Meet in Chicago, and we called it Bridging of the Minds, and it became Bridge to Nowhere. What happened was that we do not have an interface, an effective interface to deal with the government, unless we really can make that possible. For example, Thomas, I know that has been trying very hard, bringing together the government, the private entrepreneurship, and of course these NRIs. Unless you really can create an effective interface, it will be very, very difficult to get anything really, done back there. Of course, some of the entrepreneurs can go and start up their businesses. There's no doubt about it. But then again, what kind of businesses? If you try to do any business with the government there, that's my experience too, because I ran a company called Dimensions in the Technopark for 1 year, because after my retirement from the UN, I thought it would be interesting to see to go back and spend some time that way. What I have found is that if you really want to, first of all, look at the government. I recently visited the Secretariat. It's unbelievable. You have hundreds and thousands of files, okay, piling up all over there. And I went into one of those homes, secretary's, IAS secretary's office, and we talked about, what is it? He said, well, these 90% of these files are about themselves, about the employees. What they're doing is, of course, they're writing the recommendations, they're writing for about the benefits, all kinds of stuff. All the other files, people really looking for, the ministries are there at the bottom there. So it looks like the first thing we want to see is really that government itself automate. Okay? The government itself has to automate. Because it looks like you cannot, if you really walk through the alleys in the Secretariat and try to get things done, to go and see a minister, where will we have 500 people, hovering over a minister trying to get a signature, get done. It's very, very difficult. So for a private enterprise really to get a government contract, let's say for example that one, automate that, put a workflow engine there, so that they have better control, management, oversight to it. If we try to propose that, that itself will take maybe years before you find any results. So what kind of a business you could really put in there? Of course, only the ones which are viable are the export-oriented enterprises. If you really want to go there, outsource the skill set there, that's fine. Otherwise, if you're really going to do it for the local consumption, it is really a humongous task, because first of all, what I have noticed is that running the events, I can tell you, we had an ERP system there really to automate the university campuses. Of course, if you add up all the value of it, we really have to price it at a certain level. Then you will have 200 people, say mama and pop type of an IT shops, running from a garage, with a server. Eventually what happened, these projects will not be implemented, I know that. But somehow, they will make sure that they will pass some money, they will, whatever they want to do to get the project, and eventually the project fail. So on one hand, there is a great picture over there, the Info Park and the Techno Park, and many of them are doing well. But I can tell you, primarily, unless it is an export oriented, if your software is really not geared for that, I think my experience has been that it will be pretty tough. The other thing is the quality of the human resource we talked about. The education definitely is a factor, but more than that, you could see that the good ones, okay? I'm talking about, if you really found real quality HR there, you may have it for a couple of years. Then they will go to Bangalore, they will go to Chennai. So the retention really becomes pretty difficult too. Of course, the ecosystem is changing. As we heard, of course, Cochin is really becoming much more of a cosmopolitan place and so forth. So in the long run, I'm sure it will change. But at this point in time, that's definitely a challenge as well. So there is definitely a high turnover in that respect. So if you really have to put in any high-end systems there, which I think will be greatly beneficial, especially what Abraham Phillips is talking about in terms of all the data we have there, of course, are really not being mined or analyzed. Think about that. We have agriculture there. We have cash crops there. Millions of dollars are really being earned exporting them. But we do not have really a repository there for all those data about the agriculture to do the analysis, to see that whether the prices in Guatemala on cardamom is competitive, for us really to go ahead and buy, this plantation or to grow it. So it's not there yet. While as St. Thomas College, we ourselves made an effort Pillai St. Thomas College is one of the best mathematical and statistical school. We try to really put together an infrastructure there because the IBM and SAS and all agreed really to give us a free software. But we failed because we couldn't really raise the funding for it. So it's not only in the private enterprise level, but also at the kind of a academic level and a non-profit type of a level. We have some kind of infrastructure, big data, if we truly really want to help the state, and of course bring it into the 21st century. These are all I have to say, and I really wish Thomas and Kerala Center the very best. If they really take this idea forward, interface, and of course get some results there. And I wish him all the best. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we had a very informative session with Dr. Abraham Phillips talking about the opportunities, Madhu Pillai talking about the opportunities, and George Abraham giving us a really cold shower, bringing us down to reality. So I'm going to talk about, I'm going to just put those in bullet points for you. The political climate, the lack of talent, resources, the government in Kerala, retention of these resources, and in terms of the role that NKI, the New Kerala Initiative, can play in terms of its effective interface with the bodies in Kerala to make this happen. I think we also, in earlier talks, we heard about how things have changed. I don't know how recent your experience is in Kerala. I think we are hearing people talking about there being some changes happening in Kerala which is conducive to setting up information technology operations in Kerala. Perhaps the reality is different. I know that a friend of mine recently set up a 20-person operation in Trivandrum. He's a non-Keralite, he's from Tamil Nadu, and he had a fantastic experience. I mean, he came back, the first question I asked him, I said, why Kerala? Why did you not go? And he said that, I asked him, I said, perhaps you had difficulty interviewing these guys, because English as a spoken language is not that, he's here in the US, he's an American citizen. And I asked him, I said, do you have difficulty? He said, that doesn't matter, because I need guys who are creative in coding. It doesn't matter if they don't speak English. As long as they know the computer languages, that's what I need. He said, it also gives me a certain amount of insulation. If I get a good guy, I pay him well, I give him a share in profits, I'm able to retain him much more than I would be able to retain him in Bangalore or in Chennai, because they will be flitting from one shop to another. So perhaps there is that insulation that we can bring in Kerala which can, make this industry work for us. But I think George brought up some really, really, valuable points. I think we need to build a culture of investing in intangibles, create and exploit the knowledge economy there. We have to invest in research and development. And I think branding and advertising for Kerala has been primarily to tourism, God's own country. Nobody's talking about Kerala being a destination for information technology. Perhaps that is something that needs to come up. And people should say, oh, you know what? I can go and set up a QA shop in Bangalore, but if I have to do a high-end IT, I'll go to Kerala. Maybe we should be able to attract and bring back talent, really qualified talent, who are not in Kerala anymore, who are probably in Delhi, in Bombay, in Pune, in Chennai, in Bangalore, back into Kerala and have them work on this. And I absolutely agree with George Abraham here when he said that these are not perhaps businesses that should sell into Kerala, but sell out of Kerala. They should just sell to companies here in the US, to the UK, to the European companies, and I think that's what will work. I'm going to throw open the floor for discussions now, if anyone has questions. Yes, sir.
When you talk about infrastructure, my company worked with Bangalore companies on bringing FEA analysis and all that. To do it in Kerala, what type of infrastructure you're talking about? To get data moving. Is it bandwidth and all that is a problem in Kerala?
Most of course, the hardware is available there. As far as the bandwidth is concerned now, at least Kerala government claims that almost every village you really have high bandwidth connectivity. But if you're in Trivandrum,